So that was an amazing moment in January 2022 when our correspondent, James Rosen, asked President Biden directly about his cognitive condition. Americans were concerned, had doubts. There was a poll, and James Rosen stood up and made history at potentially tremendous personal, maybe even professional cost. But it was a question for the ages, and James Rosen joins us now. His question, that chapter is actually covered in the new Jake Tapper book. James, once again, for probably the 1,000th time, congratulations, and we thank you for that incredible moment. How do you feel right now amid all of this renewed, I don't know, or introspection that the media seems to be doing, and a lot of finger pointing too?
Well, at the risk of sounding like one of those athletes who's just hit the end zone and starts speaking in biblical terms, I'm very grateful, Greg. I'm grateful to God for having all my arms and legs and lungs, and I'm grateful for being able to work, and I'm grateful for great friends like you. And you have been tireless in bringing attention to that moment and the importance of it, and I deeply appreciate that. And you were doing so at a time when very few others were. I'm proud of my work on that moment. I asked the question respectfully. I said to the president, I don't know if we're going to play the clip, but I said that I wanted to ask the question that was somewhat delicate, and to do so with utmost respect for his lifetime of accomplishment and the high office that he holds. I paid a high price for it. I was blackballed in the White House in the form of the press operation in the person of Jen Psaki and her successor, Karine Jean-Pierre. I was not allowed to ask any questions in the White House press briefing room or in other settings such as background briefings or telephone briefings and so forth for 8 months. These are the boxes you usually have to check in order to get called on in White House press briefings and those types of settings. You need to have a seat in the briefing room, which Newsmax does. You need to, generally speaking, to be a member of the White House Correspondent Association, which I have been more or less in good standing for about 26 years. You need to show up every day, which I was. And you need to be respectful, which I was. But nonetheless, in response to that question that I asked the president about his cognitive fitness and the growing public concerns over it that early, January 2022, I was blackballed for 8 months, and that wasn't even the longest of those periods. I was also blackballed for the final 14 months of the Biden administration.
Well, James, we are going to play the question in its entirety, and I think as impressive as the substance, the thrust of the question, it's also how you handle the moment. Your respect, your appropriate deference to the President of the United States, and watching his lack of respect is really something as well. Let's take a look at that moment that, again, made history, and it's really a beautiful thing to behold. Let's take a look.
Thank you very much for this honor. James Rosen with Newsmax. I'd like to raise a delicate subject, but with utmost respect for your life accomplishments and the high office you hold. A poll released this morning by Politico Morning Consult found 49% of registered voters disagreeing with the statement, Joe Biden is mentally fit. Wow. Not even a majority of Democrats who responded strongly affirmed that statement.
Well, I'll let you all make the judgment whether they're correct.
Well, so the question I have for you, sir, if you'd let me finish, is why do you suppose such large segments of the American electorate have come to harbor such profound concerns about your cognitive fitness? Thank you.
I have no idea.
Remarkable, James, in every respect. How you asked that question, that you asked the question, and his flippant response. Number one, what was your initial reaction once you heard that and you sat down? What were you thinking? You weren't satisfied with that answer, I'm sure.
I was, in fact, because it was all the public needed to see. I always knew that he wasn't going to spend a whole lot of time on the enemy territory of public concerns about his cognitive fitness. A nimbler respondent, someone like Barack Obama, could have made sport with me and left me as roadkill by saying something to the effect, because you've got BS outlets like yours pumping out BS, right? And I'd be dead. There would be no opportunity for responding. Instead, we heard the President of the United States say, I have no idea. And that was the entirety of his answer. And to many eyes, that answer validated the question, because when a man tells you, I have no idea, he is, in a sense, speaking to a mind that is empty.
Wow, how about that? Well, we know from the new book, and I have, I don't like this book, we kind of knew it anyway. We knew it intuitively that the staff freaked out behind the scenes. Let me ask you this, though. What about the social media? There was a bit of a social media onslaught and a mainstream media onslaught that you had to endure for asking a question that everybody, look, I know you went through, we know what it's like to be cyberbullied, some do, if you want to talk about that, but I'm also interested in this bigger question. What did it say about everything that you could not, that you were punished for asking a totally valid question, not just by the White House, but by society? That shows a society in serious trouble, in my opinion.
Well, I suppose a segment of society, which is to say the hoi polloi of the intelligentsia here in Washington. And I was made to feel rude and fringy for asking that question by my colleagues in the White House press corps. And as I mentioned, I was blackballed by the White House itself for about 8 months. And as we saw, nobody followed up. Nobody asked the president again about his cognitive fitness or about the concerns surrounding it for about another 2.5 years, at least until after he announced for re-election. And by the time President Biden withdrew from the 2024 campaign in July of 2024, it was clear that this once fringe, rude question that I had posed really cut to the heart of the defining issue of the Biden presidency. And we are not done by any means with the disclosure, the public disclosure on this story. Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson are colleagues of mine. I've known them both for some time. I've known Jake for about 25 years. I have respect for both of them. But we will see more books come out. We will see memoirs from various White House officials come out where, for money, they will retell their stories of what they knew about Joe Biden's decline and when. And then the greatest prize of all, and it'll take a lot longer, is we will have archival disclosure. We will finally, at some point, get our hands on the White House memos and emails and texts from the Biden administration. And those will give us an insight into the mechanics of how this extraordinary edifice of deception and misdirection was constructed and how it worked on a day-to-day basis, and perhaps an answer to the question of who was really running the country.
Did you hear that, folks? An extraordinary edifice of deception. James Rosen speaks better than most people can write on their very best day. It's pretty amazing. Now, we respectfully may have certain differences with certain journalists in Washington, D.C., Jake Tapper and the rest, but I hear he's a nice guy in real life, and that's fine. But, James, you are a nice guy in real life and a fantastic journalist by day and night. We really appreciate it. We look forward to your next book. Let's have you back soon, okay? Thank you very much, James Rosen.
Thank you, Greg.
Appreciate it.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.